I see you guys. Sam I Am, Rocket, Ridgeback Bronc, RD, Gizmo's mom, Sweet, Grammy Pam, Sparkling, Above, Beyond Every Fear. There's a world I long to explore, discovering more and more of you. Yeah, I gotta get it back together. Do 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 do. La da 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 da. Do 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 da da. I'm sorry. I got 100%. You know what? I'm in the woods. It's weird. It's weird. I can't even go to picture yet. But I'm in the woods, but I have like all this. I don't know, guys. Should I go back in and come back out and try it again? I don't know. Let's see. See where we're at. I don't know if it's going to make a difference, to be honest with you. Let's see. Every time every fear, beyond every fear, la da 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 So I'll take the chance and follow through the shadowlands and find you beyond every fear. I wrote that song, Beyond Every Fear. And beyond every fear, there's a place I long to explore, discovering more of you. Beyond every loss, there's something I can never lose. Beyond every darkness and shadow is the place I'm longing to get to, that I really am carrying the freedom about it, because I really can't ever run out of things to say about moving beyond fear, because it's insidious. There's so many flavors of fear. There's so many flavors of fear and experiences of fear and ways fear is leveraged. It's because it's a visceral reaction, and because God created you with an emergency response system in your body. It's your body's meant to keep you safe. And when those safety mechanisms, or fight or flight or acute stress response, are weaponized against you by your experiences, the very things that are meant to keep you safe and aware can be tormenting to you. So we're going to take back the reality of what God has put in us. And today and every day, I just get stronger and stronger. But some days I don't feel it. Have you noticed that? You look back and you see the arc, but then when that thing hits you, and it talks in the Bible about, people losing their strength from the inside and their legs waffling and and everything crumbling within you, we all feel it. And especially to now, when it's not us, it's systematic manipulation of fear through the traumatization of the earth trembling, literally. So where are we at? Where are we at with this thing? For a little while, we talked about the purpose of God, and then I took a fish knife and I slashed the center of this canvas. So this thing got traumatized. This is a scar, and it's not healed in the nubs of the scars. And unless the scars are reframed, and especially through the power of forgiveness records, and you scratched them, then when you went to put the stylus on it, it would play. It would always catch on the groove. This singularly the most important step I have found in personal healing of trauma. And it's what I always bring people into the process by which God begins to untangle the wiring that every time we're triggered by a similar experience, we go back to the bitter memory, which was our first memory, or our early memory, or our most terrifying memory of pain, or the one that made the deepest impression. And so current things will bring that up, and the records and the stylus of our life will get stuck right there in that groove if we've not walked through forgiveness. So, I talked about forgiveness. I gave you steps of forgiveness. I gave you forgiveness prayers. I gave you forgiveness concepts. And what I scars, the brush was affected by it. The brush tried a spaculum and elastomeric latex sealant. This is not probably what you would normally do, but since I use latex paint, I began the process of smoothing over and creating a new surface for some other shape on this painting. And I talked about how in our first, depending on how traumatized you've been, forgiveness will be a process for you. It will be something that you do in layers. But there are certain very, very important, significant ones that happen at first. And God begins that process of really laying in a nice thick coat here. And then it dries, but it's not particularly pleasing because it has to be sanded. Now, this is figured out is that after I put this uneven surface of latex on here too, and even I kind of, something else showed up that has to be filled now. I got to sand it down, smooth it out. This is like one of those sanding bricks. And other things might come up in the sanding process that now I really got to smooth out. And then, what's going to happen if I'm trying to really get a nice, smooth, fresh surface? What am I going to have to do? I'm going to have to get out another layer of my, handy dandy premium elastomeric latex sealer. And I'm going to have to... Oh, look at that. I busted open the end of it. See, this is typical me. My husband will be doing this with such caution and thoughtfulness, but not me. I got to just jump into it. That's why he did some painting, and he would do, look, it's all over me. He would do watercolors with a tiny little, tiny little paintbrush. And he has the most amazing, fine, thoughtful handwriting. And he slows down when he signs checks. And I, on the other hand, am going to get latex paint and big squishy brushes, and I'm going to squirt things out and get them all over the place and make a mess and get big ideas out and jump right in, now that I've learned not to be afraid of the splash of jumping right into my life. It's very much fun. But what I've found, my friends, that is really, so see, I got another layer, and I've, I was a really intense perfectionist growing up. What I found is I've gotten freer and freer. I'm more splashier. I can jump into things because I know there's a way. Do you see this big thing over here? Oh my gosh, that's a mess. But I know there's a way to fix it. I know there's a way to rework it. I know that the damage I just did or that was done becomes part of a story, and it becomes my joy to figure out how we're going to turn this latest thing into something cool. In fact, when I come up here, I do summer paintings, and I will even come back a year later and find something that I don't like about a painting that I really got myself into. Like I did a representational thing of a man and a woman, and the glory of the Alec way. But I had to have some body parts, arms and stuff, and and my kids said, "Mom, did you notice that man has 6 fingers?" And I said, "What are you saying? There's 6-fingered man? That is the 6-fingered man we are looking about. We're looking for the famous 6-fingered man." I had to learn how to paint hands. So, I mean, I've learned there's a way as an artist and somebody with a sense of humor to get yourself out of what you think is a mess that can never be fixed. How much more the Heavenly Father? And so let's talk about this forgiveness thing. The first piece, I think, and the biggest, if you're particularly traumatized, and then we're going to talk about forgiveness relating to our nation, okay? So we can move out of corporate trauma, because ultimately we need to really release our nation with great authoritative prayer and our personal example in of the trauma that we've been under. And for most of us, the first understanding of forgiveness is the hardest. It's the one that is so just it's so unjust that we, the ones who have been hurt so deeply, would have to be the ones that release to the justice and mercy of God the person who's hurt us, and that feels vulnerable, and it seems mean. But when you and that by choosing to forgive, we are set free, and the healing comes to us. The freedom comes to us. The abundance and the authority comes to us. We begin to experience the recompense, the repay of heaven, for they could never really restore what they've taken. It's too late. But God, and He requires this, because you've been forgiven much, you love much. As you've been forgiven, forgive others. And that first layer of forgiveness is getting that concept and getting your feet wet with just the general, okay, I choose right now to forgive this person who left this massive scar on my life. And I can't even imagine, even the healing's messy. It really sets people free of demons of bitterness and unforgiveness, which they're so insidious and so toxic. So that first understanding that forgiveness is really for our benefit, forgiving someone else, and you've heard this, but it's beautiful, unforgiveness and bitterness is like eating poison and expecting someone else to get sick. And it's so true. We go over and over and over the pain when we think about them and how wrong it was, and we defend ourselves thinking that our bitterness is going to keep us safe from getting hurt again. But ironically, unforgiveness and bitterness attract rewounding. They attract other people who come into our lives who do similar things. And they also attract pain, because our memories will get stuck in a neural wiring knot of rehearsing. And so the first thing that disconnects that neural wiring and that pain response of just being stuck and being triggered and rewounded is the choice to forgive. And it really breaks open major strongholds, but it's just the first salvo in an offensive move to you taking your life back. Forgiveness is not defensive, it's offensive. It says, I'm getting this back, and I'm going to do it God's way, because man's way of getting back what you want is revenge. I'm going to get you back, or someone else back, right? God's way of getting things back for us and restoring is the offensive, asymmetrical warfare move of forgiveness, right? So when we forgive, He takes that first slop of stuff across the wound, spreads it out. And then I did that on Friday, and I came back and I wanted some more. And I'm gonna need, this is imperfect. It's not all the right materials, so I'll be playing with this. But then there's the sanding process, right? That's painful, isn't it? After God has see if there be any hurtful way in me, any way of pain in me, from Psalm 139. Search me, know me, try my anxious thoughts, see if there be any way of pain. We can see that. And He sands it. And you go, but I forgave over that. And the Lord will go, yeah, but did you see how it affected you here? Let's move into that. Let's add a layer for the grief, how it affected you in other areas, because there's always grief. And there's comparison. What could I have been? What might I have been? We have a member of our family who was violated horrendous early on. The process of healing as a lifestyle. And we've taught them from very early on how to engage with Yeshua, with Jesus, for healing. Those same steps that we see in the same ministries, Freedom Encounters, Sozo Ministries, Emmanuel Ministries, the 3 Easy Steps to Emotional Healing from Dave Hayes. And we taught that as a lifestyle for all of our children, growing up from when they were very little, about how to have a lifestyle of engaging with emotional healing. But wow, it was crazy when we found out what had happened to one of our little ones and how deep that had to go. And so even though we went a layer here and then reworking and sanding, as that child has matured, the fallout of that wounding has affected them, and say, I understand you released that person from their debt, but you're aware now of other consequences and fall. This time it involved forgiving God. Now people say that's hard to do because he never really makes any mistakes. But friends, it's all in perception. I've forgiven people that were probably way more saintly than I, but in my perception I felt so hurt by who they were and what they did. And sometimes I had irrational forgiveness. I forgive you for being who you are, because for some reason in my world, you being right there and being who you are offends me, and I'm getting bitter about it. So even though it probably is not you, I choose to forgive you for even triggering me and even drawing breath. I mean, I get on it, and when God is sanding me down, making the rough places smooth, and that sanding reveals an area of weakness. That if I'm feeling offended by someone, I try as quickly as possible to forgive them for my perceived offense, right or wrong. And it's been very powerful for me to do that with God. And for this person in our family, went through this and realized that they were precious walk with God, but this thing was really kind of growing a reef around their heart. Looking back and saying, but I trusted you when I was a little kid, and look what happened to me. Are you really fair? And it was a deep seed, a deep one. There's much. This is a very functional young person, very godly, flowing young person filled with the Holy Spirit, but there was still a reef of dead things dying out and creating a wall, an internal wall. And in the process of God making the rough places smooth, sanding over, healing, it came up. And I said, you know what? I know this may not make sense to you, but I think you need to forgive God. And I think you need to, and are you willing to let God deconstruct the reef, the bony, dead, reefs are made of dead animals, dead sea animals that calcify, right? Are you willing to let God deconstruct the reef you've built around your heart? Because that will be scary to you. And so this person thought about it and went off and journaled and forgave God. How could you let this happen to me? I've had to do that so many times, you guys, in many years past. How could you let this happen to me? God has purposely offended me in my life over some of the most important issues. Did you know he'll do that? Did you know he'll do things you can't understand? Put you in positions that you simply don't understand, and you're like, I thought you knew me better than this. You said, the word says, delight yourself in the Lord, and he'll give you the desires of your heart. And he has so many ways just delighted me out of nowhere. But I had a sense of entitlement over certain things that I believed I had to have in this life to be healed and whole. And those were my deepest ones. And after proving his goodness so many times, when he decided to give me the thing he wanted me to have, that would be the best thing for me, it didn't fit what I expected and I believed I needed. And it offended me deeply. I felt betrayed. You see, we all have a one thing. We have a one thing we feel entitled to. I just need this one thing to work out for me, and then I'm going to be golden. certain type of guy you're going to marry, a certain payback in life, a certain achievement you must have, a certain control, something you believe that you have to have, and it's your carve out. It's your carve out. I've been so good. I've been such a good kid. I've always obeyed you. Older prodigal son, I've always obeyed. That's going to make me feel whole. It's hard to see what is just. One thing that happened to you, it happened. And in both of those kinds of instances, my point of view, you harmed me. You brought fruit. You're abusive. Holy and perfect God. It makes abundant emotional sense because we're the one holding the offense and we're the one trapped in the bitterness. And so as God is making the rough places smooth in your life, very often will come up that there's a deeper wound of anger and bitterness towards of your anger and your unforgiveness of God. Why? He's the big guy with all the power. He should have known better. We feel small and powerless, like, how dare you? Or how dare you have done it in the world? We can be bitter at God for our perceptions of, we can take up other people's offenses, hurting people around us who are offended at God. We can become offended at God. We can become offended when we look at world history. And our theology can be an offended theology. And I think a lot of liberal theology is a theology of personal offense. And so now we have to whittle God down to size, and we have to come up with our social justice to make it right because he screwed us over. So how do you forgive God when you're offended and in grief? Well, you get out that heart and you're really, really honest. I can't tell you how many times I've had to pull up a chair, be in a car with an empty seat next to me, or be with another believer and pour out my grief and say, God, I know you're good, but you hurt me. I feel like you hurt me. I feel like you hurt me on purpose. Like you went out of your way to hurt me because you know my vulnerability and you know my desires, feels. God, it hurts. And you have to go deep and you have to get honest and you have to not be afraid that he's going to smack you down in your honesty. And you have to get it out. But because I have your Holy Spirit in me and what I know about you and the ways you have loved me that have built a structure in my life of grace, I choose to forgive you. I choose to repent of my bitterness toward you, my unforgiveness. I forgive you. Thinking it seems like you withhold it. Forgive you. You now to tear the death that's now built a stony, calcified wall in my heart. And I give you permission to take that apart. And then watch and see. Ask him this question when you go through the process. I give you my pain, my disappointment, my grief, my wall. What are you giving me in return? It's part of the Sozo ministry package when they're working with someone. I'm giving you this. I'm giving you my pain. I'm giving you my whatever. And they will often have you ask, now ask Jesus, what's Jesus giving you? And then they'll ask you to show Jesus how you want to take down my wall. Very often they'll see a specific way Jesus is actually taking down the wall and opening it up and inviting you out. And there's beautiful, beautiful stories of how God will take down of a wall you, the judgment of God. And that becomes, to me, the most important, the deepest layer in the forgiveness process. And don't try this alone. Get with a team of people who can pray you through these things and walk you through. But I'll tell you, we did this recently. It was kind of a shock after the prayer session. And there was visions and things that were very lovely, but it was raw. It was a raw time. And I said, now, just rest that you did amazing work today. Now just be. Let things unfold. Let God just draw you to himself. And just watch, just be. It was interesting because a week later we reflected back and already there had been shifts and changes. And and a moving out of a terrified corner in this. I give you this pain, I receive your healing, I'll see what God is doing, and then I just let myself be. I don't expect to have an instant God, asking him to take it and then going ahead and receiving what he's giving us. There can be succor, there can be comfort there. But I also believe it's just beautiful to just kind of want to lay around and let somebody feed you ice chips, you know? Put your toesies. We have people to forgive nationally, don't we? We have wicked people that have harmed us. I want to start with Anthony Fauci, just saying. You know, there are names that come up. There's the Soroses and politicians and people we know have harmed the whole earth. Can judgment of God and out of our personal vengeance. This does not mean, however, that there will not be reckoning and tribunals and whatever. I'm just saying, perhaps some of our trauma can be released. How do we do that? Is that possible? I'm just asking the question. The other thing is, can we then receive forgiveness for our planet? Can we bring even, you know, in the court of heaven, can we bring the sins of our region and a nation to him? Agree with our enemy that we've sinned? Can we secure forgiveness for our planet? Can we secure rulings of God causing the enemy to cease and desist with the brainwashing, the propaganda, the mind control, the trauma? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. And as we get free, trust me, the more healed you get, the less you'll be triggered and trapped and stuck in the groove of your pain. And the more the 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 media, you'll be free from the media yammering because it doesn't go to your core. It'll bug you. You shouldn't listen to it. But what I'm saying is, it just doesn't get to your core and re-traumatize you again. Okay? That's what I have to share with you today. Go do something that scares you, like forgive God. That's a good place to start. I'll see you guys